So I don't like normally starting a video halfway through a project, but I realized what we were doing today is pretty cool. We're trying to get our in-temperature syrup up, our in-bottle temperature syrup up, and I'll explain it as I get closer to the system. So this is our filler. It currently has 8 heads, and we're going to increase it to 12 heads. And typically how this works is we heat syrup up in the kettle over there, run it through a filter press, and it goes up this pipe and follows this pipe all the way down into what we call the canner. It's a water jacketed canner. This is just what we know. I'm sure there's better ways. We've seen better ways, but right now this is the system we have. And inside there is hot syrup. So you have to bottle syrup at a hot temperature. And when we're canning syrup, we want to be about 192, 193. And this jacketed canner has an electric element that heats the water on the outside of this tank. The inside of the tank is stainless steel, the outside stainless. And what we do is we run a boiler pump to circulate the hot water through this little reservoir. This is our overflow reservoir. The overflow reservoir always has syrup in it, and that's what this pump will push the syrup, pull the syrup from the reservoir down here and push it up this pipe into a manifold. And this is what we're doing today, is we're replacing this manifold. This is a single wall stainless manifold, and the syrup will flow through the inside of the stainless pipe, through these hoses, into the filler. Actually goes in the top, it goes out the bottom once the bottle's full. When the bottle's full, it overflows back into this reservoir. So this entire site is kind of under construction a little bit today, but I kind of wanted to explain that our hot water loop is heated in here. The boiler pump pushes it into this little jacketed tank. This is the overflow reservoir, and it's also where the hot syrup comes out. So hot syrup comes out and goes in to this tank. There's a float switch in here, a float switch, which tells it to fill. One of the issues is our input, our hot water fill, is going through this boiler pump, and it's being fed at 3/4 inch. The problem is it's discharging with 1/2 inch PEX. So the discharge is 1/2 inch, which is smaller ID, so it's restricting the flow. So what we're going to have to do is pull this off and increase the size fitting so I can increase the flow, and I'm going to replace this 1/2 inch with 3/4. One of the reasons we went with the 1/2 inch was this was the only spot I could return hot water. There's a sight gauge here that tells us the level in the tank, and we put a T on it and returned our hot water back into the sight gauge. Instead of doing that, we plan on pulling this heating element out, putting a 2-inch T, a 2-inch nipple. What's going to happen is this whole heating element is going to be extended a little bit outside the tank, and we're going to feed water, our colder water, back in to the T that this heating element is run through. So that's what we're doing today. So we're going to go from this single wall manifold that holds hot syrup that we've attempted to keep the latent heat with foam insulation. We're going to go from this single wall straight pipe to this jacketed manifold. There's a hot water input. There's a hot water discharge. And I'd like to thank Daniel Dismukes for sourcing this for us. The hot syrup will flow through these pipes, out these pipes. This is actually connected, so it's still a straight pipe. So hot syrup will flow and be kept hot by the hot water inside this jacketed manifold. So you can see the size difference. You know, we're going from 1.5 inch single wall. Inside this 4-inch pipe is this. It's just going to have hot water surrounding the tubing and keeping it warm. We're also going to have to insulate, so I'm over here cutting my donuts to go onto the outside of my pipe. So we're going to insulate this whole thing to keep the hot water hot, but I wanted to get a shot of it before we assembled it. It's a beautiful piece of mastery. My favorite color is stainless steel. So I want the insulation to go over this flange, but I want it to be tight around this. So I'm actually going to cut the actual insulation, the foil bubble wrap insulation, a little bit on the ID of this, so it seats really tight around there, so we don't lose any heat. Okay, we got our input water or output water, so we're going to come off this boiler pump. We're going to come off of this, go into the bottom of our manifold evenly. The hot water is going to flow through the manifold on the outside, come out here, go down into the bottom of this reservoir, and then it's going to come out in 3 spots on the reservoir. Here, here, here. 3 discharges. So we're hoping that this will be pretty turbulent inside here. But the hottest water should touch the coldest syrup. Just basically a heat exchanger. So why did we put a manifold on our bottling system?
So for one, to keep our syrup in bottle temperature at 180 at least. But the main reason is because bourbon barrel aged maple syrup, if it is heated up over 193 after it's filtered, it will create sugar sand, which basically looks like sand at the bottom of the bottle.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I knew you guys had a reason.
Yeah.
What's that temperature, the max temperature you'll heat it to?
The max temperature we'll heat it to is 193, and then we filter it, but then we make sure to not go over 193.
So that's what all that cloudy stuff in the bottom that settles out, that's what causes that getting too hot?
Yeah, so we would heat up the syrup to, 200 just to ensure that the in-bottle temperature was 180.
Well, here's a good question. Why do we heat syrup?
Why do we heat syrup?
Yeah. Why do we heat it up?
To put it in the bottle, you have to sterilize the bottle. So
the syrup actually does the sterilizing?
Yeah.
So we have to get to a certain temperature to kill mold spores.
Right.
Does mold happen sometimes, Zach?
It still does happen, yes.
It happens. Is it dangerous?
No.
No. Like, they used to put it right on the jug. It said, hey, if syrup's moldy, just skim it off and reboil it. It used to be right on the jug.
Really?
It happens. Sometimes the cap doesn't seal perfectly. It won't kill you. But it's unsightly.
Yeah.
So it's about as dangerous as that sugar sand in the bottom, but it's just no one wants to see it.
Right.
So the jacketed manifold is going to help us control the temperature better.
Yep. That's correct.
Especially for glass. You got to be hotter in glass than, your incoming syrup temperature needs to be hotter to account for the mass of the glass.
Right.
That's pretty good, Zach.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time. I know you like work and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, Zach, you want to do a video? Thanks for watching Bissell Maple Farms YouTube channel. First of all, I'm pretty humbled with how much of our YouTube videos, like how many hours people are consuming. Like, it's pretty amazing how fast our channel's growing. And thank you for being interested in the maple syrup industry and in us. So if you like what you see and you'd like to watch more of it, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, and hit that little bell icon right next to the subscribe button, and that'll tell you when our next videos are coming out. So thanks and happy Thanksgiving.